A new architect that comes on board, how long is that taken?
It takes them 3 days to be turnkey. And what I mean by
Okay.
turnkey, which is very fast, and people
Yeah.
are blown away about this. It's like, well, how long do you want them to be trained until they're actually billable, making you money, making themselves money? So our package with Revit Rocket Ship is a 3-day course.
Welcome to the show. Today we've got the serial entrepreneur, the architect, the builder, Lance Cayko. He is a legendary architect. He really takes old school mentality, right? Doing it right. If you're an architect, you're going to love to listen to this one. Lance is the forefront leader in what architects are going to be like in the future. Lance, welcome to the show. Your work in both the architectural world and then your transition into the construction world. I've followed now for a while. I've watched your podcast. I've listened to you and your partner kind of as they inside the firm. Your growth it's kind of been fun to go through.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I'm flattered that you would that we're getting noticed by people such as yourself, especially fellow podcasters, people who are in the industry and everything like that. And that's exactly what we document on our show. Is from the day one we tried to recap, and I just wanted to put that out there in the ether to try to inspire other people like us. We're older millennials, but also the younger generation, Gen Z. That the American dream is still alive and out there if you go just grab it.
Look, and I think today the old, in fact, what turned the Gen Z off about our industry was the old timers. In fact, I would say that my group of people that are in that age, that 50 plus age group that runs the business, bore the crap out of the Gen Zers. They are ready to take on new technology. They're ready to be unleashed. Some guidance is great, but what I'm watching happen today is this amazing transition between new technology. And I want to get right into that right off the bat. You really start to look at you guys and your company. How are you guys transitioning, bringing that young Gen Z group into the mix? And how are you seeing the technology really impacting both the construction side and the architecture side?
Yeah, well, let's start with how we're trying to foster Gen Z or even the younger millennials that we have at the firm, both firms, into feeling comfortable, basically telling us and giving us from a bottom up approach, an organic approach about new technologies, implementing them into both firms. It just starts with us trusting their intuition and what they're seeing on the ground. I think that's where the big disconnect happens. Let's say from the generation above boomers down to the baby boomer generation, and then when it cascades all the way down to Gen Z, is there's a disconnect, and that's where the friction is. So I think, I empathize a lot with the older generations too, because as an older millennial, I understand the hesitation to adopt new technologies because after a while, it's like I am sick of another app. Or even for me, as somebody who's went through many, many tests to do what I do, architecture tests, contractor tests, like I say this often, I am so sick of tests. So if somebody ever wanted me to design it or build a building in California or New York, you have to take an extra test there to become licensed. And I'm like, just because of that, I am over it. But the critical part for you if you want to be a successful business owner, a successful leader, is you need to listen to your staff and take what they're saying seriously. That doesn't mean you have to do everything that they're saying. So for us, one of the things we've implemented to drill down exactly how we do it is we all read this book about 3 years ago in the firm, and it was called The 2-Second Lean. And the idea was then we would take the ideas and the processes from that book. I think it's Paul Aker is the author of that. And what he did is he examined like what Toyota did to become one of the number one until Tesla overtook them, manufacturer and seller of cars in the world. Like how did Americana lose, GM and Ford and all of those things? He went and examined those guys, and they did a lot of these 2-second lean improvements that made their manufacturing process just exponentially, once you added all of those together, much more successful, much more streamlined, and much more profitable. So now what we do is we have a Monday morning meeting, or we have a meeting every morning, and everybody from staff has to do, they have to say, what is your 2-second lean? So what are they doing technology wise in the software that we use, or other kind of methods that we're working with? It could even be just client interaction, email templates, all of those sorts of things. So every day, a different person has to present what they're doing, and then we tie that in with our principles at F9 Productions, which can be found on our webpage there. And that has fostered an immense amount of lean improvements at our firm, and that's how the technology really ties in for us when I drill down in it.
Let me back up, because I think something that when you and I pre-showed, we talked a lot about, you guys are really become experts in Revit, right? So much so that you do courses and stuff in
Yeah.
schools, right? And I think that's where you're getting a lot of great new young talent. And to me, where we're going with artificial intelligence, the AI process, right? It really starts with kind of two basic understandings. One, getting all of our data into one source of truth, right? So one system where we're not siloed all this data. But really more important than that is starting with the details like Revit. And I'd like to talk a little bit about Revit and your all in you're all in methodology to Revit, why you're there, what do you see as being the kind of the what's making that the beautiful idea for your group? How are you really creating and seeing that?
So to speak again on that, on the younger side of things, right? When folks come out of architecture school, we actually want them to not ever even have been into another architecture firm. What I liked is that, like, I'm looking for lumps of clay, and even on the construction side of things, like, I'm looking for lumps of clay. It's harder to unlearn people than to learn people, and we try to do. My business partner Al Gore was in the Army, and we do a crawl, walk, run sort of scenario with everything that we do. So people that have even come into the firm and say they know Revit or they've worked in Revit, let's say they have touched on it in school and stuff like that. We say, okay, I want you to pretend like you don't know it. Now, here's our course that we have honed in over the last 10 years by working through in University of Colorado Boulder, teaching a couple of courses there. We also sell it online at revitrocketship.com. And what it does is, when it initially started with me and Alex, when we started out our firm in 2010, we had very little built work, meaning like ourselves, we were not business owners at that point prior to that, right? So we couldn't just have all of this bevy of built work to show prospective clients to trust us at such a young age. I was only 25, Al was 23. Very young in the architect's world in terms of you trying to start your own business. Most people, I've taken polls, start in their mid 30s. So we were a decade before we probably should have done it, just based on if you looked at just data like that. So one of the what we had, it was a problem, and I think that's where a lot of our solutions come from, or things that we implement in the firm, is like, we just try to solve problems. Okay, what is the process we did to solve that problem? Was it successful? Now can we repeat that and create a system that help other people solve problems? So the problem was, when we were trying to pitch to potential clients very early on, is they would say, I love you guys. You're doing all the right things. You're doing all the things right to start things out. You're fast, you're communicative, you under promise, you over deliver. I think you guys are talented design individuals, but I don't know about trusting you guys with putting together construction documents for my baby, right? And their baby is maybe a first-time developer or a very seasoned one. There's a lot of money on the line, a lot of risk. You screw up on drawings one time, it can have a cascade effect. So what we did is we said, well, we're going to model your project like it's built. We're going to virtually do that before it's built. We're going to give you an extra set of drawings that other architects weren't doing at that point, such as 3D details on our structural side of things. So we have, your traditional 2D structural plans and all of that, but then we have an additional sheet right after, let's say, the foundation plan, where we're showing a 3-dimensional drawing of the foundation. We're testing them. We're testing out all of the nuances of the design solution before it gets built. So it's virtually modeled before it gets built. And that gave them the confidence, those first couple clients, to trust us and hire us. And then we said, okay, that was a successful implementation of that. What does that mean for younger staff that have never been in the construction field? This is the perfect way for them to learn the construction, even though they're not out there, before it even gets built, and they feel completely empowered after that. All of a sudden, they're not doing the guessing game of what other architects used to do back in the day, even whether they were drawing with like 2D floor plans, just with traditional blueprints, pen and paper, or CAD drawings, which is traditionally 2 dimensions. But now Revit has allowed us to build these models out, and now they don't have to try to wrap their head around like, what does this 2D detail translate to in third dimension in the field? They can test the whole thing out, and they just clicks for them.
So I think that's something that's really kind of why the Revit models become the basis for number one, real success. I mean, I don't know where we stepped away from that in the architectural world, right? My guess is that really because of competition and pricing and all of the bid process that architects have gone through, the beating they've taken economically in the industry, where drawings have become just these more schematic designs, right? And in order to get those details that you're talking about, really to get to that level where you have that third dimension where you could see the interaction between crossover connections and connection points and all the stuff that really at one point was. I mean, I found some old drawings from places where they literally made those details out in hand sketches.
Yeah.
Right? But it's very time consuming. And until now, in AutoCAD made it really fast, right? You could do a two-dimensional drawing, and most of the rest of that was left to figure out in the field, right? And my judgment is that that's what's happened to the industry, is that the industry is all messed up because we've kind of done this sketch of a drawing, and then we go send it out to the field, and they got to figure it out. And just like every architect does something different, every builder does something different, every carpenter does something different, every electrician does something different. Their training, they're all over the board. And when you go from AutoCAD to Revit, right? The detail requirement for creating the Revit model, number one, takes it's a little bit more to build it at first, but ultimately takes the guessing out of it. I mean, where you can really see that those parts you were talking about. Now, can you see that translating into AI, where the AI model starts to be able to do that drawing?
Boy, that's a tough question. If I could just pause that thought, and I'll
Yeah,
go back to that,
sure.
because you brought something up that I really want to address, and that is, I think your premonition is correct of like, okay, like where did the disconnect happen?
Right.
At some point in this century, where the architects are basically drawing these schematic level drawings, sending it out to bid, and then they're the bad guys, and rightly so. Here's what happened. People can argue with me all day long, but this is what happened. So everybody agrees that we are a highly specialized society now. And all of a sudden, back in the day, maybe you were an engineer and you could do all 5-6 disciplines of engineering. Well, now you're going to go to school and you're going to drill in on just one and focus in on that. So the same thing happened with architects. Architects used to be the master builders, 100%. Frank Lloyd Wright is an excellent example of that. So what it is okay, if Frank Lloyd Wright was the master builder and he was actually executing the construction work out in the field, for example, like Taliesin West, Taliesin East.
That's right.
Oh no, he was out there.
Right.
If you ever toured Taliesin West, the tour guide will tell you, oh yeah, and he'll be pointing out like the foundation work, and he'll say, oh yeah, Frank Lloyd Wright used to specifically pick the rocks to use, and he'd call them like, this one's a goose egg, this one's a duck egg. It was very interesting stuff. And so he could just put together schematic level drawings, knowing that it's all going to happen in the field because he's still the master builder.
That's right.
Well, they never transitioned to, okay, now we need to do what F9 is doing. We're being the master builders in terms of building it in Revit and doing those extra details. And now we're one-to-one with the builders, and the builders aren't, and the builders, again, they have a good point about, you can't just give me lines on paper and expect me to figure out the rest in the field. I need more data than this, because now we're in this highly specialized society. The way I think AI is playing out. So I'm in the Entre Architect community on Facebook, and I think there's 8,000 members at this point, and it's, in my opinion, better than the AIA, because all of a sudden architects in the last decade, thank God for Mark LePage for starting this community, because we're less protectionist. So we are happy to share our methods, our means, We talk about the best practices. We talk about business strategy. We actually talk about business. I mean, that's the biggest, one of the biggest things architects like, much more artists than business. And now we're getting to this nice coalescence of about a 50-50. So we're half business people, half artists, and that's really where we want to be. And so in there, we've been talking a lot about AI. Obviously, I mean, Chat GPT just entered the ether in this last year, and nobody can stop talking about it. So what we've been seeing is like people have been experimenting with Midjourney AI. And what they've done is now in this last version, you're able to feed in drawings or pictures, and it can iterate on top of that. So we've had a lot of architects take, let's say they produced a photorealistic rendering of a house or a building that they're designing, and then they're able to feed it into the system, and then they're able to spit back out much, much quicker than even their software, because it's all this stuff is cloud-based, right? And it's highly computational, iterations of different kind of materials for it. So it's very bleeding edge at this point.
Sure.
And that's how architects are using it right now. What I think in the future it's going to be is, I think you're going to be able to feed it like a space program. So a space program, for example, if I was going to design like a 3-level house, basement, main floor, upper floor, I feed the AI the space program. I say, here's how many bedrooms on each floor, bathrooms, etc., stuff like that. Give me 4 iterations of that. Then I focus in on 1 iteration of that and have it do 4 more iterations of that. And then I go from there. So, and then eventually at the end of the day, you are going to hopefully see it going in to further than that. And you're going to maybe record a meeting with your client, point out, and it'll be able to read from that meeting what the issues were, how they want to change things, and adapt the model and the drawing to that. I don't know how far out that whole situation is, but I can only speak to, at this point, where it's trending so far. So if that trend continues, where architects are using it, or designers, or any graphic people are using it to just help generate the initial ideas, because even writers are doing it with the blogs, right? They're saying, give me 10 topics on training dogs. It's wonderful at spitting out the 10 topics. It's pretty bad at spitting out a whole article. It gets kind of bland. There's no human element to it. And I've recently used it. We're redoing our website right now. We hired Neil Patel agency for that. And they're requiring us to do 2 blogs a month. And so I have used it in that capacity, generate some ideas. We start expanding on one of the ideas that I like. We expand a little bit further. But I'm still having to write at least half the content, layering in, and then it still needs 1 more polishing. And I'm going back to a human that I hire from Fiverr, and who's really good at writing, much better than me, like English majors and stuff, and having them layer back on more human elements to it. So right now it's a hybrid. It's a very low level hybrid because of the prompts versus how much human input is going in. But I think we're going to see that gap narrow, because even a headline I just saw last week was, I think somebody from Google was predicting humans will be, they will be immortal in 8 years. That's what they're saying.
That's right.
What does that mean? Well, it means you're going to upload your brain and you live on forever, just like this podcast does in theory, right?
That's right. Well, I think therein lies your kind of the neat part of it. As you see that AI model be that assistant at first, right? And I think ultimately the labor intensive parts of it, which I don't think architects make any money on. I think they're trading hours for time, and it's just a painful part of it. I think you're exactly right in structuring the humanness of it, right? Being able to take the idea, the components, really even bring it to the AI, which, I mean, ultimately, one of the hardest things we've had in the architectural world is resources. I mean, you go to any old time architectural firm, they've got rooms and rooms of stuff, of materials and products, and just be able to access those when you need them, the samples and stuff that you need, just being able to get to that was a painful. I mean, a lot of architectural firms have a person that managed that whole process, right? I mean, getting the stuff in the room, getting access to it, and imagine being able to have a resource like an AI platform that can now take your idea from your meeting, go out there, make those couple of iterations, 4 or 5 iterations, pick from those the parts and pieces that you like from them, collaborate and put that into even a further form, and start to pick from materials from around the world, right? But not just the materials from around the world, but materials that are available around the world now. Right, that will fit your project and fit your budget and your timeline, right? To me, the most exciting part of where we're messing up in the business is that, one, we have architects doing work that's really labor intensive, and they're not getting paid for it, and so they don't do the details that really need to get on to make it a useful need later on, right? Because we get in the field and we spend all this time trying to figure it out, and on the construction side. So I don't think that we're getting the value there, but imagine AI being able to do that, to give the value, but also at the same time being able to pick products and availability and pricing, so that all that happens simultaneously. So we skip that next step, which is, all right, I got to design, I go out to get the part, now we can't get the pieces,
Mhm.
now we got to go back. That whole back and forth, time consuming, labor consuming part of our business on the construction side.
Yeah, if I had a wish, if AI is listening right now and it hears me and it can fulfill my wish, it would be the other thing I would layer on is it would be great if we could get rid of the bureaucrats with it.
Oh,
So one of the biggest gummy parts of construction, and it doesn't matter who you are, architect, contractor, builder, obviously owner, is dealing with the bureaucrats in the building department. And a lot of their work is made up busy work because they want to seem like their job is necessary. So you will get these comments from plans reviewers that are just copy and pasted. They don't even look at the drawings. Everything that they are saying aren't on the drawings are on the drawings, and your job is reduced to, at the end of that process, when you're just trying to get the building permit approved, is is showing that, is just answering their questions and saying, yeah, I know what you're saying about that code. It's right here on sheet A7 drawing 4 or whatever. That would be, so what the wish would be is, can we get AI to start replacing these people? So instead, what we do is we feed the AI set of drawings into the building department. The AI does all of the code checks, and it's stripped down to the point where it's just looking for fatal flaws. It's just doing what the AIA says the license is all about, is with protecting life, safety, and welfare. But it's not trying to make itself more important and add extraneous stuff. That is, I think, a big missing piece. And it reminds me of just other industries and other people being their jobs being just taken away from the whole situation, whatever it is, because of automation. And so that's because, like, is there really a human element that's needed to review the drawings, or are we just making sure we're going through, we're checking the boxes? It's just checking the boxes. So why can't we replace that whole system and get to that point? I think everybody's going to be better off as a result for that. Even the plans reviewers, like, go out and do something creative after you get laid off because AI took your job. Go do something that's much more fulfilling for you. How much better is our housing stock going to get in terms of supply? Maybe we're finally done with the housing crisis because we get to that point, because plans are flying through, builders are able to build again. Maybe even some of those plans reviewers see the sky is blue at that point and go, oh my gosh, look at how big of a shortage we have of all tradespeople. And now I will go into that trade and actually do it and earn a really good living, because the tradespeople are killing it right now, as long as they're good at their jobs. Like, we have a huge shortage of plumbers. It's so hard to find a plumber.
I mean, every city's got the same thing, and you're exactly right. Getting rid of the plan review process has been, it served its purpose at some point, right? There was
Yep.
a time when having someone double check an architect was great, but today, with licenses and insurance and the litigious society that we live in, there's not an architect out there trying to do anything that's not going to be successful, right? There's those days, and if there are sneaking through somewhere in there, the marketplace will weed them out pretty quickly. But I think, to your point, is once we get to a point where AI's, number one, that assistant in drawing it, right? Where we know that it can go through and check and really develop really, really detailed 3D, AutoCAD or Revit type drawings, where every single component is seen, right? And we can see the 3D model, we can see crossover connections, we can see fatal flaws, we can see structural analysis, we can see performance data, right? Right. And at the same time, it's creating the design. It's also sourcing the material and seeing availability and pricing to make sure that it's, number one, the right product. I mean, here, how many projects do you know are buying lumber from Canada when they got stuff available in the same state they're in, and we transport this lumber from Canada to fill this project because it's sold by this company. They buy it in bulk, and because they buy it in bulk, it's cheaper. But the amount of time it takes and energy to take that lumber from Canada to your project in Denver, that projects, there's already lumber in Colorado available. It's somewhere in the future, we'll see a way of looking at that in a much smarter way, right? Today, the way we operate in the business, we just go by from where it's cheaper. At some point, the next level of AI, once it gets through design and the impact it'll create in design work, right? Helping you really create these visions, these buildings that are phenomenal, right? Being able to take your creative part of the human experience and bring that in the machine. It'll do the drawing, it'll pick the materials and availability for it. And then at the same time, have a third party AI do a review and repair, and how that happens simultaneously. I can imagine a world where that entire process happens so fast that the day that a brand says, "Hey, I want to build a house, here's a piece of property," it'll be able to spit out a number, availability, and even go so far. I say the next section is it'll go so far and see the products that it'll use to build it, but it'll also be able to go to the marketplace, just like Uber does looking for cars.
Mm.
It'll be able to go to the marketplace and look for availability of subs, where general contractors and subcontractors are gone, where the AI goes literally to the marketplace and starts to pick the plumbers, right? And you'll be able to get the plumber, just like the Uber driver got rid of the taxi company. Uber, the AI will get rid of the subcontractors, and us as general contractors as we see them today. That whole platform will change dramatically. Be a much different platform, which ultimately all those pieces are taking from their expenses, their overhead. There's redundancies. There's a lot of inefficiencies in that whole model. We're going to evolve, and it's kind of exciting that I've been doing this my whole career, and I still find it to be archaic.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I imagine that they built the Coliseum very similar to I just built a Panda Express in Florida. I'm like, we carried heavy stuff from over here to over there. We banged on it. There was some little bit more computer stuff. But if you went through the permitting department down in Hallandale Beach, Florida, or Pembroke Pines, where we're building a swim school, it was 9 months to get a permit. How can that possibly be so? When the permitting people that are reviewing it have no license, they're most of them aren't trained properly to do or carry the insurance that we have to carry, right? All that whole process just creates inefficiency for both the client who's paying rent on a space that they hadn't opened yet, right? Imagine paying rent on a space for 9 months that they haven't occupied yet.
Yeah, huge issue. Yeah, I mean,
Huge.
I'm so glad you brought up even just a simple example of a tenant finish like that with the Panda Express. It's like where are the realtors held culpable for also trying? Their job is to sell space, or lease space. Sell the lease, and so they want it like they're going to try to do everything they can not to lose the deal. So part of that is okay. You have a prospective business owner who wants to move into one of these spaces. What do you tell them as a realtor? Oh yeah, hire an architect. You'll be in and out in 3 months. You'll be operable then. Let's write the lease from the landlord, and we say, okay, let's ask for no rent for 3 months. You and I know, Anthony, it's probably 9 to 12 months actually. Once you hire the architect, go through the process, then you go through the city and all of that stuff. So, I have no idea where AI plays into that, but I got to imagine there's going to be some kind of solution with that. It's just about streamlining and creating a better feedback loop. That's the biggest thing, as I think the feedback loop is it's too big. It could be smaller, and closing that feedback loop and making it more rapid is really where the future is. And then hopefully it allows for one of the things we've been asking for the whole time is instead of you brought up a really good point earlier about architects spending like an extraneous amount of time of their lives drawing stuff that is just, it takes too long. Is it necessary? Yeah. But the softwares and everything have been increasing. We pride ourselves at our firm. People ask us all the time, like, especially my friends who haven't started firms yet, how many hours a week are you working? And when I tell them no more than 50, like I'm the owner, so I should be working a little bit more than everybody else. But like our staff members, no more than 40. And then we tell them about their salaries, we tell them about bonuses, and we go, how do you do that? And it all goes back to that system, that fundamental system that we set up, Anthony, with Revit, and convincing clients, modeling like it's built, honing in on it, layering on the 2-second lean meetings that we have, and constant improvement and short and tight feedback loops.
Let's go back, because I think that your structure is something that is missing. So all this AI stuff will happen, and I'm excited about what's happening. I think that the details that you guys are taking for number one, training, right? This is where, one of the best trainers I've ever met, he would break training down to nth little details, right? I mean, like literally sitting in a chair type of, here, you're going to practice communicate with somebody. How about you two just sit in chairs first, right? And doing what you're doing. So talk to me about when you do training with an employee, give me a new architect that comes on board. How long is that taken?
It takes them 3 days to be turnkey. And what I mean by
Okay.
turnkey, which is very fast, and people
Yeah.
are blown away about this. It's like, well, how long do you want them to be trained until they're actually billable, making you money, making themselves money? Profit is the lifeblood as a company, as you know, Anthony. So if you aren't having turnkey employees with you that are profitable very quickly, all you're doing is paying for an extraneous amount of training, and you're extending that payback to where your investment, rather, right? Because you're investing in these people, you're investing in their skill set. So our package with Revit Rocket Ship is a 3-day course, and we do the crawl, walk, run series. So to break it down for people, what happens is with a crawl, walk, run is, again, we just say, if they know Revit, just pretend like you don't. And because it is very important that you understand our systems and how we model in Revit architecture, it will help. We explain to them, it helps the clients, it helps the builders, it helps us. It especially even helps you, the new employee, understand construction, and you will be more confident within the first year than a comparable firm by far, unless of course the other firm is listening and then they took our course and they're doing it like we're doing. So they do that, and what they do is they start building just these very basic models. They
So
start with,
give me like when you say basic model, is that a dog house? Is it give me what do you
you're
say
kind of
basic?
close, yeah, that was
Yeah.
a good
Okay.
guess.
Okay.
So we first have them just open up there's two sides to Revit. So if people don't know, there's the big project model side, and then there's this other side that's called the family side. And all these families just think about them as like the little Lego pieces in order to make the big structures in the project side. So we have them build these little Lego structures, basically. We have them build different Lego types. So they just do these, crazy little shapes, and then we move them up to this flexible box. So we just have them create a 3-dimensional box that can flex in width, height, and depth, and then it can change the materiality. We review that. Then we have them create this structural platform. It literally just looks like a table, but it's even more complicated. So that's what I'm saying. It's a crawl, walk, run. So by the time they're walking, by the time they get done with the table, exercise. Then we move them into the project family side, the project side of it, and they recreate a cabin. So we have an example set of drawings of what we're looking for from them at the end of it, which is basically a construction level set of drawings. Either they've done these before, or ideally they haven't. And they go through the exercise. It's 5 or 6 videos that they go through with that. And we walk them through every single step of it and show them exactly how we want things modeled. And then the last piece, which is outside of this training, is, but it's tied in. It's just different. Is we show them like, okay, here's what our proposals look like, and we do proposals much different than other architects. We're not AIA members. The AIA would have to beg me to become a member, because I think they actually fail architects because they don't teach the public what architects really do or how they do it, even though they say they do. And so why I'm bagging on that is when I saw other architects' proposals that were written by the AIA, it was like 10 pages of words. So you mean to tell me you're an architect and you're going to go try to sell your services, and your service is pictures, drawings with just a bunch of words? That seems completely counterintuitive to me. So what we developed is this proposal that is graphically oriented, and it has 4 different phases laid out. So not only does it help inform our clients about what to expect in each phase in terms of deliverables, and what those phases are: schematic design, design development, construction documentation, and permit documentation. And then we have these graphics from other projects. So for example, the Eastwatch house that we did, that's where some of the graphics come from. And where I show this to our new employees, I say, look, our first deliverable in the schematic phases are presentation level, just floor plans in the schematic phase. Then we iterate on those once. Once we move on to the design phase, we're doing the design level, very rudimentary design development level elevation drawings of like, what does it look like on the outside with 3D included on that. And then we move into construction docs. It gets more detailed, engineering and all of that stuff. And then we have example sets. So because and this is a phrase that like blows people's minds that I tell employees, and I train the senior level staffs to say it too, is if I'm speaking to a new employee, one of the last things I'll tell them after they're trained and they're ready to start on their first project with us is I say, you will impress me less if you try to go above and beyond at the beginning. You will impress me more if you just try to go to the point of where we need to be at with a deliverable. It gives them a framework, it gives them structure, and it makes them feel like they can be still creative within that structure, but that they're not having to do this extraneous stuff. Like, we're not impressed with the above and beyond right away. Like, I don't need you to do extraneous drawings to try to impress me or the client at the beginning. We just need to do enough to convey the message, because why it would be unimpressive to me is I watched the bottom line. Look how much extra hours we would have spent doing those sort of things.
That's right. That's phenomenal. Getting, first of all, have them be able to see where the line is, right? I think a lot their interpretation of the line and your interpretation of what you said, I find that the biggest breakdown in all the training that we do, right? And any of the companies I work with or the brands that people I sit down with, they're always having a breakdown in, well, we told them how to do this, but they showed up doing this. And great. So you telling them and them understanding is the breakdown, right? Therein lies the breakdown. If you can show them where that line is, the example of that line, and going, hey, look, I don't need you to think more than that. It's literally just
Yes.
that. You mean it's just that? Yeah. It's just that. I don't need. It's not that plus what you think is. No, it's literally just that. I just need just that. And I think that's a phenomenal way of training people. Like just making sure that they can see it. And because I've never met an employee yet who doesn't go, yeah, I got it. I got it. They all want to sound smart. And then you walk away and they're left going, all right, did he really mean this? Did he mean I should do that? But then if I did this, I'll look better. I love where you're at with just stay here in the boundaries. And I don't mean anything more than that. I literally mean just this. And they're small little wins. And ultimately, those little wins have them more excited, have them more engaged, have them feeling, powerful, and not lifeless, where they overcommit to something, fail, and then there's kind of that feeling of disappointment. And at the end of the bottom day, it's expensive for you as a company because it's impacted the bottom line dramatically. So I love, Lance. That's awesome. You are you've breaking some big boundaries, right? And as you make these continue to take these steps through the business, how have you impacted that on the construction side? How does that show up when you get over, you get the drawings, so you guys do both sides. You do both the architecture and then you go over and do on the construction side. Talk to me about how this is impacting your construction side.
Oh, it's created this amazing feedback loop. I'll give you a couple different examples that have been really, really phenomenal. So to be clear to everybody too that's listening, we don't build every single building that we design. We actually only build a very select number of them, because this is where I've always felt like we have an advantage over other builders if we just do this right. And that is, if they're our architecture client first, there's a couple hard and fast rules for us to build for them. They have to be within a 30 to 45-minute radius of our headquarters up in Longmont, Colorado. I have a big family. Alex has a family. Everybody has their loved ones, and we're all. And if you live in Colorado, you work hard, you play hard. We've got
right.
all of these glorious mountains. So life is short. Try to maximize what you can do, pleasure-wise outside of the firm or whatever company you're working in, right? And so, so we're able to basically interview the prospective people we're going to build for while we're working with them as architects. If it's always sort of you're jumping out on a little bit of a limb, no matter who you're working with for the very first time. Sure, that first interview with them, you guys might have really clicked. Everybody's in a good mood, but eventually, like, a hot button point's going to come up. Eventually, the stress levels are going to go up, and then you start to see how both parties react to that. So if we're getting about halfway through the design process with folks, and we can just tell that this is going to be a PITA if we extend this business relationship for another year, because that's typically what it is for like a new house to build, then we say we'll end up just recommending another builder for them. But if everything's going well, if we just, there's this synergy that just, and the relationship actually continues to build in a really positive way, and we've truly gained their trust. So we are their trusted advisors in architecture and construction. And then through that trusted advisor relationship, there's honesty, and that is so important. And a big critical part I know that contractors get hit with a lot of time is like, you hear the story of the shady contractor, right? Who's hiding all the numbers and inflating this and then not showing up on time and doing all the other stuff. We break through that. When we break through that barrier with prospective clients, that's when we translate and turn to build for them. Okay. So what happens is then if we can identify that and that we're going to be their builder about halfway or 3/4 through the process, our architectural model is then able to change a little bit more and be a little bit more developed. So all of a sudden I'm asking staff for, because typically like some things we won't include for another contractor, if we're doing the architecture on a certain house or something like that, is like, we're not going to model in the finished floors. That's a little bit too much. I mean, at the end of the day, the client's either going to pick an interior designer to do that, or they're going to have the contractor who has these vendors, right, kind of walk through that. So we're doing, maybe if I'm the builder, then we're modeling like shower curbs. We're putting in glass, the glass shower, stuff like that. And then where the feedback loop has come in. So what that does is then my modeling those extra things, if I know we're going to be the GC, my takeoffs are like a breeze. And I get very accurate takeoffs. I know exactly how materials are intersecting. I can start to predict the future, right? Because we're modeling it like it's exactly built. And maybe even I am instructing our guys, our gals who are drawing it based on the subs wants and needs in the field. So 2 examples of that. When we have built off of maybe previous standard level of drawings that we've done, one big thing we got from the art electricians was they go, I love your guys' electrical plans, which included all the outlets plus the lighting and everything. And they go, but is there any way you could separate them? They're like, what if we just had the outlets on one sheet? And same, let's say it's a floor plan. On that floor plan, we just have the outlets. And then we have the lighting plan on a different one. They go, that would just clean it up. And honestly, that's the sequence of how we're doing it anyway in the field. And so we made that implementation. And that was just one electrician that we were working with on the building side of things that told us that. And now every electrician that we work with says, I've never seen this alone is just huge in itself. And then we get recommendations from them for whatever reason. On the plumbing side, the same sort of thing happened. We used to just show like, okay, here's your toilet, here's your sinks, here's your lavatory, all the other showers and stuff like that. Working with the subcontractors in the field, the plumbers were saying like, if you could just give us like 2 more levels of dimensions, I guarantee we won't be calling you as much to ask for them when you're building this too. And so there were some basic dimensions. They were like, if you could just give us center to center, and then if we move to an elevation and you're giving us the height of the fixtures, and the questions have went way down. I just had a plumber because I said, okay, Everett, he started asking the questions. I go, Everett, go to this page. And he goes, oh, I didn't even look there. All right, well, I don't need to call you then. We'll let you go. And now those plumbers who have worked with us routinely, they've said over and over again, like, we build for a lot of other builders and that have different architects, and your guys' drawings and coordination is at a different level than other people. And it's because we created that feedback loop from architecture to construction.
Let me ask you this. How far are you in that set of drawings to going from there, which is great, right? Like you're getting more details so they can see it. But if I want you to do a takeoff, if I want you to be able to do a takeoff for every stud, every screw, every nail, every drywall board, how far are you from that level of detail? Because my real belief is that until we get there, we're still in that guesstimate. Right? At some point, how far, what kind of time does it take to go from where you are now at the level where you can see it to the point where I could get a takeoff for every screw, every junction box, every pipe ring, every every component that I'm going to build with. How far away are you in that design?
I'll answer that in two different ways. So if I do that, it takes me about a week and it's still manual work. Because I really like that you pointed out you're specifying like nails. I mean, when
Yeah,
you get, because that's like the bottom level detail that you could specify, right?
right.
Or the most tiny and specific, I guess.
Yeah,
For me, it's going to take a week. But and then it's like, okay, I'll feed that into who? Like I can go make my own order at Home Depot or stuff like that. But and then the other way to answer this is, yeah, I'm still sending it to lumber yards to do all the stud takeoffs and stuff like that. So on a bigger house, or like a house that's brand new construction, it's still getting sent out in that way, sort of thing, right? This is where I think then, if eventually AI picks up the pieces there, they could really fill that gap. And that's, but the other stuff though is pretty simple. So for example, right, how many square feet of flooring, how many lineal feet of wall framing, how much we are modeling like each joist framing member, so we can do those takeoffs really quick. Length, steel lengths and stuff like that, steel members. That stuff is still happening, but yeah, there's definitely a gap still between, let's say, getting down to like the fasteners. That's my
that's right.
easiest way
That's
to
right. That's
explain
right.
that.
That's right.
Yep. Yep.
But my real belief is that's where when people ask me, how do I get ready for AI? How when I instruct companies or architectural firms, or when people ask me, how are you? What are we doing at CDO Group or at the brands that I own? We're working on going down to that level of detail. Like today, I'm working on, you know, when we put this one source of truth together for all the information we do, at a project management point of view, in the past it would be start construction or mobilize. Like, and mobilize would say but what does that really mean to the group of people that are? What does that mean? What happens at the end of day one if I say mobilize, right? You know, the same thing happens in architectural drawings, that we leave these big gaps that are open in order to really fulfill the AI model that's coming. Where the amount of work that we do up front, right? Where we start to go down those components, like literally, a bottom track, a stud, two screws, drywall, screw, mud, paint finish, literally to the point where we've got gallons of paint,
Mm-hmm.
gallons of mud, screws. When we get down to those level of detail, my real judgment is that's what's going to be the differentiating factor between scheduling. Because later on, what happens is if I can detail that out in the drawings, I can detail that out in scheduling. I can have a group come in and go, look, drywall group, I need you to hang these 17 boards in this room. And here's the mud for it. Here's the screw for it. Half of the problem we have with most of our subs is they show up and they get to the job site and they start to spend the time they look at it. They're like looking at it going,
Mm-hmm.
all right, what am I going to do? Interact with the other people, and people change their mind and decision, and they spend less time working and more time figuring. And my judgment is that as an industry, if we go backwards a little bit and we spend that level of detail that you were talking, take the extra week, one person, say it's 3 weeks. It takes one person 3 weeks to do that, detail that out. Now, as we move forward, just like with your training, we can look at every component that we need. We can have materials delivered for a room for a specific job, so that it's kind of just in time. It doesn't clog up job sites. That next level of detail becomes a recipe for a much faster. Ultimately, just like your employees, they make more money because they're much more effective. A plumber can show up and put, a plumb up this wall today, and they know that instead of coming here to plumb up this wall, but end up having, nope, I have to do that wall because we miscoordinated our project assignments. And it happens every day. I mean, every single project we go on, our superintendents do their best to get there, but
Mm-hmm.
someone gets sick, availability. The sub that came here yesterday isn't here today. The sub that says he's got 5 people only has 3 people. They say they can get this much done. They don't get, that level of performance that plague. We've already bid this thing to death, right? You've already got people who bid this thing down to not making any money. Now you're asking me to go perform with those people, and the information I give them is causes even more brain damage. So, as we start to work through that, that's why I ask, Lance, I really want to get excited about, I feel like you guys have taken that step. And now as we take that next step, I think that getting down to that nth degree really starts to create the kind of communication between teams that uh, makes us way more successful than ever before. In fact, spending the time and money as a client to do that now, to your point, I can now take that takeoff and send it to every supply house.
Yeah.
And I know exactly what the materials are. In fact, I'm going to take that off of my subcontract because look, how does a painter do it? The painter looks at it and goes, well, that's 1 gallon, that's 2 gallons, that's 3 gallons, that's 4 gallons. I got 5 gallons. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna double that. I'll make it six. I'll make it 10 gallons because there's this question in there. And then so what ends up happening because they have to go to the supply house, they have to get it picked up. Imagine that paint being at the job site for those 3 rooms they have to do. It's already been ordered, right? The way we communicated already said I need 17 gallons or 15 gallons of a paint number, whatever it is, yellow, sunset. And it's at the job site at 7 a.m. and the painters have the rollers and the sticks and everything they need to do that work right there. How much more effective do our teams become, right? How much more effective does the industry become? And the bid process we put them through really causes a lot of frustration, and it's an environmental nightmare. I mean, it's an
Mm.
environmental nightmare. The work that we do to have people bid. I mean, this whole I got 5 bidders for a house to bid on this. 4 lost it, and all the people who bid for those 4 people wasted their time, and all that energy got sucked out of the industry. And that's an environmental nightmare right there. I think that if we just looked at that one component alone, we could give our people a lot more money and make it a lot more profitable if we just found an easier way to sell a story that the price is right. If I can show them that these are the components, here's the actual material cost, here's the actual scope, and when I put together schedules, I can show them that I'm going to do this room. It's going to take me 3 guys to do these 3 rooms, 3 days, and I can show that in a real detailed schedule. Here's hour by hour what happens out there. Now the owners can see it and they can trust the numbers are the right number. And ultimately, I didn't have to go waste everybody else's time, and I can communicate much better and make sure that people follow schedules to a different level. So I think there's where I get excited about having the millennials come in with their new ideas, and that all came from our younger folks that came in with different apps they're using, different ways of doing takeoffs and finding it. They're asking me, hey, can you give the subcontractors we bid to because the great subs we're looking for are in the field working all day. By the
Mm.
time that sub gets back and is able to put together a bid for me, they're tired. And if I can give them, hey, look, I've already got the material figured out, and here's a schedule to match it, and they can see, hey, this is going to be a 3-week project with 5 people. I think to me, I feel like we get bids back a lot faster, a lot smarter, and our industry is going to start heading that direction. Ultimately, that becomes the uh, smarter way of doing it rather than the old-fashioned way of, hoping we can get this done in 3 days, or maybe we can get and lying to each other about that. Being able to see it, set expectations clear, and then make everybody much more profitable at the end because of it. So yeah, I love where you're going with that, Lance. You and your partner are doing a bunch of great stuff there. You're innovative. It's exciting to listen to your podcast, watch you as a company grow. So let's make sure everybody knows it's Inside the Firm podcast, right? And you're
Yep,
on
that's correct.
on all the platforms, right?
Yep. If you want to see us live in terms of just our faces, we're on YouTube, Inside the Firm podcast. If you're wanting to listen terrestrially, we're on all the major platforms: iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, all of that.
Great. And if anybody's looking to get a hold of you, where's the best plot to get a hold of you?
Check me out on LinkedIn. That's where I will. If you're listening, I will absolutely connect with you. I even connect with the spam bots. I love trolling the spam bots. So just look up my name on LinkedIn, LANCE, last name CAYKO. Pronounced Psycho. Don't forget it. And there's only one of me in the whole world because it's such a unique name. So you will find me.
Well, I got to tell you, you and Alex are doing some great stuff together. And anytime you want to be on a podcast, I'd love to have you guys on more as you continue to break through all the stuff that you're doing. It's wonderful to have you folks on, and I'm grateful to get to spend some time with you. Thanks for being on today.
Thanks so much for having me, Anthony. This was a phenomenal interview. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. Well, audience, as always, if you got a second, please make sure that you like and subscribe, and we will. Click that bell down below. It means the world to both Lance and myself, and the work that we're doing here. So thanks for listening in.